Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. Yeah, I know it's Tuesday. This happens a lot when I'm waiting for news. Monday's kind of a weird time for Market Monday. I like to start off the week talking about things that I think will affect the market throughout the week or throughout the coming month. And just the catchy phrase Market Monday. But unfortunately, Monday tends to be the day when sometimes news lags, and yesterday was one of those days I was waiting for just a little more news on Amonkhet to make a full video, just because there wasn't enough content here, I think, to really talk about how it will affect the market and what we really can expect from Amonkhet helping, as far as like what I like from new sets right off the bat is not how it's going to affect either standard or modern, but really how it affects casual. So we do have a little bit of information about the casual cards that this will, the kind of commander EDH cards that this set might showcase and whatnot. So anyway, we'll talk about as much information as we have, and then talk about a topic that a lot of people have requested me to talk about, which is when to buy into Modern Masters 3 and any other information about Modern Masters 3. So let's just jump right into those topics. So the first of all is Amonkhet. We have so much news. This is explaining basically the mechanics. So this is going to be a -1/-1 counter set rather than a +1/+1 counter. They've said they don't want +1/+1 counters and -1/-1 counters in the same set. So poor Whiny Constrictor is not going to get any more help as far as the +1/+1, like more Walking Ballistas or more cards that come into play with +1/+1 counters. I mean, that's what they've said, but Wizards violates their own rules or their own basically policies all of the time, so we could see some +1/+1 counters. But I know for a fact that Mark Rosewater basically said in one of his he does a lot of blogs and whatnot that they hate putting +1/+1 and -1/-1 counters in the same set because it causes just a lot of messy interactions in the limited portions, the drafts and whatnot, of keeping track of +1/+1 and -1. People don't understand that if there's a -1/-1 placed on a card with a +1/+1, it gets rid of the counter. It's just very messy. So this is going to be a set that is dedicated to a lot of -1/-1. A lot of people think maybe Persist would have come back, or maybe will come back in the next set. I don't think that that's too far off. They've said they have been wanting to bring back Persist, but this one, instead of Persist, is called Embalmed. Embalmed, see if we'll get to Embalmed. Embalmed is a ability that exiles the card. I believe it does, because I haven't read here too much. So it's an activated ability. You can activate the creature card is in your graveyard, and you're not casting it, so it's very much like an Earth. And then you put in a token of the card. So basically, here's the Embalm. Here's a True Heart Duelist, 2 mana for 2/2, and then it embalms, and you put a 2/2 creature token that's exactly the same of it, but I believe you exile this card. It doesn't say right here. Maybe I should read more on this Embalm. Comment in the comment section if this does. That'd be busted. That'd be way busted, I think, if you just keep embalming it from your graveyard. But it seems to be a very, very powerful ability. There is where it doesn't quite help like the Prized Amalgam, but it does trigger off a lot of things that did come. No, it does not, because it doesn't ever enter from the graveyard. So I don't know how it's going to affect things that activate after they've been used in the graveyard. But dredge type effects might want this, like dredge decks might want these type of cards because they're just free. This is a card that is basically a free spell in your graveyard. So I'm thinking like cards like the what do we have? Like the enchantment from Innistrad and Grapple with the Past, as well as I can't think of the name of the cards. Look at the top 4 cards of the library, put one of them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard, or a permanent in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. Those type of like self-milling strategies get a ton better in the Amonkhet. So I think Shadows of Innistrad is going to pair very well. Remember that when this set was designed, they did not design it with the Eldritch Moon, Shadows of Innistrad, Battle for Zendikar, those type of or those sets still being in standard. They are supposed to rotate with their new rotation, but then the public outcry with the rotation, they reverted back to only 1 per year rotation, and so maybe there's a lot of graveyard. I'm thinking there is, since it's a zombie set, since we'll talk more about why that's important for especially casual and what cards you can pick up based upon that. But anyway, the graveyard strategy, Delirium especially, I think it's a ton better because we do know one of the key mechanics is utilizing your graveyard. So be looking for those cards like speaking of a very good one with Embalm, Grim Flayer comes to mind because it can help ditch things into your graveyard, and then you can at least get value out of them by embalming. I mean, there's a ton of cards in the format right now, especially from Shadows of Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, that put stuff into your graveyard from the top of your library and then just allow you to cast them. I mean, it's very easy. Remember the old Emrakul decks? Very easy to get Delirium just by self-milling. And if you remember the old Traverse Ulvenwald and the Elder Deep Fiend, which also tried to get the Kozilek's Return into the graveyard as soon as possible, they were doing that extremely quick. Turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, when you could start casting these Elder Deep Fiends and having a Kozilek's Return in your graveyard to wipe the board. So I think that Embalm is going to be a knock out of the park. I think it's going to, if Amonkhet does not have those enablers, be looking for those quick picks from the Shadows of Innistrad and Eldritch Moon especially to flip. But a little bit of a warning. This is the time, right after this pre-release and right after the first Pro Tour, you're going to see some spikes in prices from Battle for Zendikar all the way to Eldritch Moon. Ditch those immediately after the spike. I think after day 2, when you start to see cards spike, get those cards on TCG Player or go to your local game stores and start trading them away as soon as possible because they'll hit their peak. I'll show you some market trends, when to buy, when to sell. People are still a little bit confused on that, and usually it is very cyclical. There is a pattern, a market trend of when to buy and when to sell for standard. Sometimes it does kind of violate its own rules with card spikes, but usually there's a very clear pattern. And I'd like to sell cards the very last Pro Tour of the new block. So I think if you wait till the second set from the new block, I don't think there's enough room for it to grow, so vendors have already started to unload them, because vendors need a good at least 6 months to start unloading cards, and we're at that peak right here. September is 6 months away, so you need to start unloading all of your cards from Eldritch Moon, Shadows of Innistrad, Battle for Zendikar, and Oath of Gatewatch. But the best time is to really, because they're already low right now, unless they're in a standard Tier 1 deck. So I think the best thing for your odds is just wait till the Pro Tour hype and then unload those cards. So we'll be talking about those shortly. All right, whew. The next card, or the next mechanic I want to talk about is called Exert. So this is basically, they have Glorybringer, another bulk dragon. It's a 4/4 flying haste. This one's actually kind of cool. I'm thinking Scred Red might want this in Modern, just because it does the damage right off the bat to a creature. It is 4 damage, so Goyfs are a little out of the range at 4. There are enough targets, I would think. In Standard, this hits Kalitas. It hits a bunch of cards at 4, but I think that the Kalitas is the best when it hits. The unfortunate thing, though, with Glorybringer is it can be active after it attacks in, and say you target something, you can still crew your Heartocron and then block the Glorybringer and get rid of it. But the Flying Haste is really cool. It can get rid of a creature that turn and kill a Planeswalker, for example. But Exert just means that you can't attack with it the next turn. So it basically gets locked down so it remains tapped, and you cannot untap it for an entire turn. So it doesn't untap during your next untap step. So I think that any cards that can untap creatures are kind of cool, or flicker it back to your, like the flicker spells. The blue has a bunch of flicker spells, white have a bunch of flicker spells. Those work very well with Glorybringer. So you attack and do 4 damage to a non-dragon, flicker it, rinse and repeat. So Eldrazi Displacer, for example, would be really cool with Glorybringer. I think it's right on power level. 4/4 flying haste for 5 gets value immediately. That's exactly where you want a card. So it's a cool game day pro. Finally, a dragon that isn't quite, bulk, or we just know right off the bat that it's going to be a terrible bulk card. This one's actually pretty cool. So again, I think that would be my only speculation for this, is that maybe the blink effects will be very good. If there ends up being a mythic that has this Exert that is really, really good, and you want to attack every turn, and you don't want to stumble on using it for the turn, then you definitely look for Eldrazi Displacers and the Flicker, especially if it's like a draw card effect. And so you can get the value off of flickering it, then it re-attacking, and then flicker it again, and then that sort of card is going to be, I think there'll probably be they want to showcase this ability. Of course, Glorybringer will be pretty cool with it, but I guarantee there's going to be one that wants to attack every stinking turn and gets so much value by doing so. And then that's where the flicker cards are definitely going to come into effect. So those are the mechanics basically. There's also this mechanic called I think it's called, what do they call it, brick. And basically you got to think of bricks as building the pyramid, and once you've assembled the foundation or whatever, then they do something better. Oracle's Vault is really cool. If you can see this on your screen, it's 4 mana for an artifact that says exile the top card of your library, and until end turn you may play that card, put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. Just pure gas. This is the card I want to see definitely in the pre-release because it's just pure gas. 4 mana, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, you're at least going to be able to cast your 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops by exiling the top card of your library. You can also play lands, which is cool because it says play, not cast. So lands are eligible to be used. And then once you get the 3 brick counters, because you put a brick counter every time you use it, then it turns into like a mini Aetherworks Marvel. So then you exile the top card of your library for no activation cost either, and then you may play the card without paying its mana cost. But yeah, and that does cast as well if you end up casting. So yeah, because play is just the keyword instead of cast. You're not just putting it into play. Yeah, you do cast it, right? Because if you do, you play the card without playing its mana cost. So you cast it or play it. I think that's how it works. Someone in the comment section correct me if I'm wrong. So you can still get like Ulamog triggers off of the Oracle's Vault. And you can only activate this if there are 3 or more brick counters on Oracle. It doesn't matter if it's sorcery or not. Oh, speaking of Embalm, Embalm is only as a sorcery. So very much like Unearth. But this one can be utilized like in a turn. Yeah, that's pretty sweet with Oracle's Vault. I would suggest not playing it on your opponent's turn because of the ability to hit a land, but I guess if you don't need to, you can instant speed it, which is cool. I think Oracle's Vault's a really cool card, though. So great design so far. Another mechanic we know that is coming back is cycling, which is kind of cool if you get a cycling / Embalm. That's going to be sweet. I'm thinking there's going to be some sort of graveyard incursion type strategy. We already have a few good graveyard recursion type strategies from Shadows Innistrad. We have the 6 mana that brings back 2. That's perfect for like this Archfiend to throw it in the graveyard and then then animate it back. So you can cycle it in your graveyard to dig for that type of spell. And whenever you cycle or discard another card, so you can't cycle itself, put a -1 counter on each creature your opponent controls. That can sweep a lot of the token-based strategies. Very good answer versus Nissa, for example, for killing all the plant tokens. It's a 5/4 for 5 mana. Decent card. Definitely a decent card for cycling. I'll want this in my Balfour the Defiled, probably my Balfour the Defiled commander deck, just because it's another way to kill opposing creatures. So anyway, that's the Buy a Box promo, I believe. And then this one's going to be, it looks like the launch day, and then these are going to be the game day. So we'll start to see, these are usually always the first thing they spoil. There's a few other things spoiled with like Gideon. We'll look at those in a second. So let's just go over to Mythic Spoiler. So here are the spoilers that have been spoiled so far from Mythic Spoiler. The Planeswalker decks have been spoiled. And the launch decks. The launch decks have been spoiled. Launch decks are kind of well, they're actually not launch decks. They're called welcome decks. These are something that local game stores can get if they just pay the shipping and handling. We usually get them, and man, we like give them out like crazy. I think at the 4th, we have our town has a 4th of July parade. I think we're going to plan on being in the 4th of July parade and just give these suckers out like crazy, the welcoming decks, and then we usually attach like a, come play Magic at our store, and then give the address and phone number and times we play FNM, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, if your local game store usually will have these because they're free decks that Wizards gives out to try to promote their game, and these ones weren't that bad. Like there's a couple of them with decent cards. The white card is pretty decent, the white rare. It's one of the angels that when it attacks, it gives your creatures like flying and lifelink, I believe, when it attacks. So those type of decks are always pretty cool. I think it's Soul of the Harvest again for green, which is a playable card. So people forget that Soul of the Harvest I think it was actually on this Amonkhet news, wasn't it, with the welcoming decks? Oh, here it is. Yeah. Let's talk about the welcoming decks. Victory's Herald is in the welcoming decks. I don't think it has any price tag at the moment, but this card won't hold any value because these are free decks, so there's going to be a bazillion out there. What's kind of cool, though, with the welcoming decks is sometimes you find money cards, and there is actually one money card right in the red deck we'll talk about in a second. So you can just go through the list here and see if there's anything that stands out. So far, not really, besides the rare with the Victory's Herald. I mean, it's a cool ability. Attacks creatures gain flying lifelink. There's a few commander decks, I'm sure, that want the Victory's Herald. And then nothing else too interesting in this one. Sphinx of Mogosi again as the blue rare, and then nothing too interesting out of the commons and uncommons. So the welcoming deck had Zulaport Cutthroat in it last time around, so that's kind of crazy. Zulaport Cutthroat's actually more on the rarity of a common because of how many Zulaport Cutthroats are in the because of these welcoming decks. This one has 2 Essex Extractions. I think this is a very playable card, and if the meta hits right, where you need to do 3 damage to a card rather than 4, I think right now you need to kill very specific cards with 4, like Heart of Quran, but if it ever did, Essex Extraction would be perfect. So anyway, Nightmare is the rare again from this one, and nothing too interesting, but this one was really cool. Flamelash. Remember, Flamelash is a card that held a pretty decent price tag because the only way you can get that is in the Chandra deck. Well, now it's actually in the Welcoming deck, and as well as Hungry Flames, which I also think is a really cool card. I think Hungry Flames is definitely a great cyber card in all aggro decks. 3 damage and 2 damage to a player. Very, very good card. Similar to what Searing Blaze did. Shivan Dragon is the rare again in this one, so these welcome decks are actually pretty good. This one has a Brazen Scourge. It's going to be quick. Really cool deck. So anyway, the green has, as the rare, it does have, has Garrick's Horde now instead of the Soul Harvest. So Garrick's Horde is a cool card. It gets pre-ended all the time. Very good commander card. I run this in Animar. It's insane when you get it out in Animar. Just pure gas. But I don't, and there was like Arbok Stomper that could see standard play, for example. It's just nice to know that these cards exist. And it does have a 6th Sense, and we'll talk about the 6th Sense in a second. So anyway, there's the decks. So anyway, significant cards that have been spoiled. We've already talked about these two and the Glorybringer, but the Planeswalker decks were spoiled. And they are kind of a preview of what they're usually a dumbed down version of something that's going to exist. So we know that Liliana and Gideon are going to exist. Liliana seems to probably put -1 and -1 counters on cards. I'm thinking that the rare will probably do very similar. Probably destroy creatures, put -1 and -1 counters on creatures. And this one's actually playable in Commander, the Liliana Death Wielder. Return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield with just a -10. It can get up. I don't know what the starting, but I'm gonna assume the starting's gonna be quite high because it's -3. I'm gonna say like it's gonna be 5 or 6, I would say. And then so just a few activations, you can return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So yeah, so I think it's a cool card for the Planeswalker decks. And then Gideon's kind of meh, though. Again, we don't know the starting loyalty. Untapped creatures you control, they get +1/+1 on turn. It's kind of weird that's worded that way. It should say untapped creatures you control, they get +1/+1 until the end of your until the beginning of your next upkeep, because then that allows them to protect. The +1 is kind of awkward. I know that, okay, so this is defense, this is offense, and I guess if you've tapped them for whatever reason, think again with the Exert. This is a way to untap them, so then you can get another Exert trigger. So that's going to be relevant. So yeah, I guess they don't want this bonus for the defensive portions. So yeah, I think that gives you some options with the. It's only 5 mana too, so it's actually quite playable. And its own turn, Gideon becomes a 5/5 and attacks in. Yep, typical Gideon. I think 5 isn't very far off. So if the regular version is going to be better than this Gideon, I think we're going to have another standard that might just be dominated by Gideons. So then the ultimate is creatures get +2/+2, tap all creatures opponent control. That usually will just win the game if you're in a creature-based strategy. So that's exactly what you need all of your little guys to get big and all of your blockers completely tap down. So it seemed to be pretty good Planeswalker decks. So both are playable, I would say, in Casual and Commander. So anyway, the other cards that have been spoiled that are significant, nothing too much. We got a Blink ability, a Grave Digger to make us think that this is going to have a huge zombie/graveyard based strategy. and we have everything else is pretty meh, except for we have Fling. So people are already talking about Fling works very well with either the Electrostatic Pummeler or the infinite combo between the Wandering Fumarole and the whatever the artifact creature is. That whenever a activated ability of a creature is activated, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then you just go infinite with the Wandering Fumarole, and then you Fling it. So Fling gives a way to actually directly damage your opponent rather than having to attack through and get through chump blockers. So that's a decent little addition. I think that Fling, of course, Fling's going to see play with Electrostatic Pummeler. That way you only have to get your Electrostatic Pummeler up to 10, which is very easy. So basically with just 6 energy, which the 3 that was provided by your... actually, just with the 3 that was provided by your Electrostatic Pummeler, then you can use the card that gives +4/+4. It puts Electrostatic Pummeler at 5/5. Then you use the energy to put it at 10/10, tack in, then Fling it, and that's perfectly turn 4. So Electrostatic Pummeler is a 3-drop. The card that gets +4/+4, I think, is Inspiring something. +4/+4 and Trample, I believe. And yeah, then you can just Fling it. So if there's an open board, that can definitely happen. We're going to see more Cancer Electrostatic Pummeler decks. I'm not a fan of losing to Electrostatic Pummeler, but they're all in decks, so they're easy to shut down, which is like creature removal, for example. But Fling does get around creature removal quite well. At least you can do damage directly to the noggin with Fling. Another cool card that I want to see is 6 Sense, which is a fixed Keen Sense. The big difference between 6 Sense and Keen Sense is Keen Sense just says whenever this creature deals damage to a player, you draw a card. This says whenever you deals combat damage. So it's a lot harder to abuse with like the Prodigal Sorcerers. I think that there is some sort of combos. I know that people love to put Curiosity, for example, on Niv Mizzet, and then does that go infinite on the old Niv Mizzet, the Draco Genius or whatever the old one was. And then Keen Sense can also be put on like a Walking Ballista. I think there was some sort of infinite combo whenever a creature deals damage to an opponent, you get a +1 counter on it, and then you draw a card, and then you remove a card, and you just go basically huge value with Keen Sense on cards that just deal direct damage to the opponent. This one you have to deal combat damage, but if there is any sort of, I don't think Bogles wants this. If you're in for budget for Bogles usually doesn't care about the Keen Sense dealing damage to your opponent because they don't really have a way to do so. Besides combat damage, so this is just a budget version that I don't think that deck cares. So if you're looking to get in to the Bogles deck, here's a cheap alternative to a $3 common, which I think Keen Sense is. So that's kind of cool with 6 Sense. It probably will see play. Usually the Curiosity type cards do see play, especially since it's in green, which is a creature-based strategy. You can throw this on something as like Skulk, for example, and then you can get a lot of damage. If you get some other sort of advantage off of dealing combat damage, this is exactly where this card wants to be. Again, typically these do see play. So that is kind of my overview for Amonkhet. So the one major point I want to talk about this seems to be another zombie-heavy tribal. So every time that there is zombie-heavy decks, I like to come over here to the EDH rec, look at just zombies. So you can look at like tribes, and look at right off the bat is zombies. You pick up zombies, and these are some of the top cards that are played with zombie-based tribal. So I love EDH Rec to just pure information on. It's the net decking basically for commander players. So these are the cards that utilize are used the most with zombie commanders. Then you can just pick up any one of these that like Gisson and Giralf, which is probably the ultimate zombie-based commander. Oops, that's just gonna give us a random deck. We'll click on this one. And you can see some of the most used cards. So the Diregraf Captains, the Diregraf Colossus, which is going to be a Shadows or Innistrad card that rotates, a Gravecrawler that is very low right now because it was just reprinted, Cemetery Reaper, Undead Warchief, Endless Ranks of the Dead, Zombie Apocalypse. All of these cards are key cards to pick up. You can see some of the prices of these cards. So as far as rotation is concerned, wait till Cryptbreaker and Diregraf Colossus hit their lows, and then I really think that you should pick these cards up. I think that they're great specs. All three of these are perfect picks. And again, every time we see a zombie tribe or a zombie-based set, which almost seems to be every other set with Magic, being a very specific zombie tribal, these cards go up. So be looking at these. Sell into the hype though. So after people start buying them, they should spike, then sell into the hype, and then if you need to rebuy, wait till people the dust settles and then rebuy into these type of cards. So that is my advice for the picks. My 3 picks definitely be right here: the Diregraf Colossus, the Gravecrawler, and the Cryptbreaker. I think all those are very low at the time. So anyway, the last topic I want to talk about, which is people always say when to get into Modern Masters. So the information that I do have on Modern Masters is I can still buy it directly from Wizards. Let me repeat that. I can still buy it directly from Wizards. So you can see some of my videos, I've been very upset with the way that Wizards has released Modern Masters 2015. With this, I think the information is good. Wizards seems to hate information. They made MTG Goldfish, for example, take down all of these stats for the various drafts, and the what MTG Goldfish was, they're paying this bot. There was a bot service that was going around and scanning they're watching, physically watching, but the bot was watching every match in on MTGO, on all of the dailies, and then compiling a win-loss ratio between the different archetypes. And they're doing this for Legacy, Modern, Standard, and Wizards freaked out and told MTG Goldfish to get rid of that. And I think that it's because they're the only ones that want their little information to publicize during Pro Tours, and they accuse MTG Goldfish of solving the meta too quickly, which is just plain ridiculous, because I think that the more information, the better for not solving, because it gives us brewers an ability to actually attack the meta, rather than just have to really... The stagnation, what ends up happening is when people start seeing a lot of decks win, is it starts becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, and people just play the decks that are winning, which creates more winning, and it's very, very hard to break that chain. And I actually think that right now Standard is in a bit of a pickle with too many people. I don't want to sound like other YouTube personalities here, but I mean, it does ring a little bit of true when it does become the net decking self-fulfilling prophecy. The only reason net decks are good is because people are net decking net decks to play net decks, and it creates this vicious cycle. So say, for example, that 80 people, there's a tournament with 100 players, and 80 of them either run 4-color Saheeli or Mardu vehicles. Of course, you're going to have a whopping amount of those in odds. I mean, you could go the entire day if 80% of the field were running 2 decks without seeing another deck. And so it's going to skew. We could do that right now with like mono-white bad tokens. I don't know, or mono-white humans, for example. If 80% of the field was mono-white humans and black-green Constrictor, for example, and then there was only these outlying decks, like the other 20% of the field was all these random decks, I guarantee you, week after week after week, that these humans would be in the #1 slots, and the green-black snakes would be in the #1 slots, and all these other decks would just maybe occasionally get up to the slot of top 8. And then what it would take is it need like very, very consistent winnings, like Marty Vehicles, for example, winning twice in a row, and then the net decking would switch. So it just becomes a vicious cycle that a lot of times the information is, if the only information we have is the top 8s, that is skewed information. It doesn't show the entire story. And what I think when Goldfish was mining the data, it was giving the pure win percentage. And I think that what that happened is people, when Wizards released that with the white blue flash, we got to see after one of the Pro Tours, I think it was, the last Kaladesh Pro Tour, the white blue flash was actually the best deck because it had the best win percentage across the field. Even though only like 8 players played at the Pro Tour, it was the best deck overall. And we've seen that in Modern before with, especially like I remember Merfolk twice in a row was the highest win percentage deck. But only 6 players played it. And so it was so skewed because a bazillion players played Jund and Abzan. And Jund and Abzan actually had a slightly low win percentage. If it's below the 55% win percentage, then it's actually quite bad because that means it's the day 1 decks. It's capitalizing a lot of the, like we call the trashier players, the trashier decks. And so it needs to be above the 55% just to break even is what we call the average deck. And so, I don't know, information is good. And Wizards just never, they're so, it just baffles my mind that they don't like information. And the same was true with Modern Masters when they didn't release the numbers that they're going to put out there. And it led to this buying spree and then sell-off, then another buying spree, then another sell-off. And it's just a weird, weird time. And I think that it's going up. You can see the price trend of these cards. The from fetch lands up are going up, and this is, to me, very, very crazy. The prices are going up right now. If you can still get this product. Now, the big thing is you can't still get this product from distributors. It's directly from Wizards. And I'm not sure if I can still get it or not. We did order another case just because I probably should have pre-sold or just sold the other 20 that I was able to get from Wizards the first week, and then they allowed us to get another 20, and we only bought a case just because at this point, how much do we invest in this product that's everywhere if the profit margins aren't that great? So just a little bit of information, it's still out there. So this is very, very troubling to me to see that these prices are going up. I think that there will be a very, very similar trend to Modern Masters 2015. Is there this much demand of people getting back into Modern? I still think maybe it's just my own bias, like blinding my perception here of the format as a whole, but I think it's going to stagnate out again. I think that people are going to be frustrated with just I've said it time and time again, the lack of vision, there's no real clear rules to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in Modern, and as the power creeps up every set, it's going to continue to cause more and more degenerate decks rather than what I call fair decks. And then the articles from you have Jeff Hoogland, you have PVDDR, you have Owen Turtenwald, you have a lot of these bigger names in the Magic the Gathering community have just sworn off Modern and thought it's just not a good format for competitive play, and why they try to avoid playing it as much as possible. And then Wizards hears that, and then they're like, okay, we're going to do less and less Modern tournaments, which gives it less and less exposure. And eventually, I think the only time that Modern is going to get the spotlight is every 2 years when this Modern Masters is released, and it invigorates more people into actually, oh, now it's affordable, I can play into it. But Scalding Tarn at $50 is a bad sign. So I think these speculators are going to kill their own gains. I think that the price increases here are more to do with the fact that people are thinking that the supply stream is now gone, and these cards will start to go up like they've hit their low. And I'm here to tell you, just from complete transparency, there's way more Modern Masters out there, and so they're going to continue to be drafted, continue to be opened, and I highly, 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 highly think that if you're holding on to cards, take this last spike as like a blessing and get rid of them right now, as I think that it's going to follow the trajectory of the Modern Masters 2015, where you saw this little spike again around the same time period when it was released. So here it was released, then it started to go back up again, and then it went way back down again. So I don't know. I guess this one just continued to fall more and more and more and more until about a year later, and then went back up. I think there was a Pro Tour. Yes, there was a Pro Tour here. That was Gate Crash Pro Tour, so people bought into a bunch of cards, and then just steadily declined. And now it's going back up just because now these cards are actually looking good as investments. So like the Noble Hierarch and the Karn Liberated and whatnot. So anyway, be very careful with your speculations on Modern Masters 2017. There's a ton of product out there, and I don't think we've seen the end of it. I'll let you know. I'll talk to Zach and see if we still can order directly from Wizards for the Modern Masters. And if anyone's interested in actually buying my inventory that I can get from Wizards, let me know, and we'll ship it directly to you for just like I don't know, whatever. We'll work something out. So message me, and we'll see what we can do if I still have a little bit of supply from Wizards directly. Alrighty. I guess maybe the Eternal Masters is a good set to look at maybe what we can see. So Eternal Masters I think saw a very similar little bump after it was released, and when people thought it was, nope, it's just continued to go down. Wow. Yuck. What a terrible set. Anyway, I guess that's all I'm really going to talk about for this particular Market Monday video. I think that, again, look for the tribes from Amonkhet. We should start seeing a lot of more information coming out. Key cards, key mechanic, or key words that you think will go with other strategies. I'm still looking at any sort of graveyard-based strategy. So in the comment section, I want you to really scour the data from Battle for Zendikar, Kaladesh, and the Shadow of Innistrad to see a lot of the graveyard-based stuff. We should see some graveyard hate too. I'm thinking Rest in Peace might be in here just because it wasn't reprinted in the Modern Master set. And so just definitely in the comment section, give me your best speculations from those standard sets you think are going to see a lot more play because of the cards that are coming out in Amonkhet. Long enough. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.